Hello and welcome back to Google SketchUp for Design and Technology. In this tutorial we're going to learn some basic rules of using SketchUp so that we can use it effectively for drawing basic components and then grouping them together so that we can move them around and manipulate them easily. Okay, so here I've drawn a box which has four sides, a top and a bottom, so similar to the sort of thing you might make in DT. Okay, now I have grouped the individual components, so if I use the move tool and I click on something, you can see if I press shift I can lock to that axis so I can move that straight up. If I then select the wall there, I can move that out, so I can very quickly create exploded views from my drawings that I'm doing. Okay, so you can see that I've split that apart. Now each of these is a group of drawings, so they're grouped together, so it's very easy to move and manipulate. Okay, and I'm going to show you a bit more on that in a minute. So we're going to do some basic drawing. So if I click on the Shapes tool, I've already set my drawing up so that it is in the construction documentation style, so we've got a white background. If I click on the origin, I need to let go of the left mouse button once I've clicked, so you can see now I've got this rubber band. In the bottom right hand corner I've got my dimensions, so I'm just going to type. I don't need to click anywhere, just type the size you want. So if I want it 150, space 45, press enter, then it will create a rectangle of that size. At this point I haven't clicked anything else. If I wanted to change that, I can do. I just type 200, space, let's say 200, enter, and you'll see it changes. Alright, but I actually want it 150, so I'm just going to type that back in and then press enter. Okay, now if I then move on to the push-pull tool, hover over the face of that rectangle, click once and release the button, and you can see that I can move that now up and down. I'm going to make that 12 millimeters thick, press enter, and there I have a block. At this point nothing is grouped together, so things are all easy to move. So if I were to, for instance, draw, let's say I wanted another shape on top of this box and I extruded it up. Now if these were two separate components, if I want to move that top one, it's very difficult for me to do so. Even if I try and select it, you'll see that you get weird things happening. It starts to stick to other parts. So it's really important that when we've finished a single component, just going to undo that, that we group that component together, and that stops things getting stuck together. So if I triple click, right click on it, and then select make a group, it will group those faces and edges together to make a single component. Now if I draw on the top a second box, and then I try and move that box, you will see that it doesn't stick to it. Okay, now obviously it would be a good idea if I were making another box, I'd want to group that as a separate group. Right, now you can make a component rather than a group. It does the same thing, it creates a group. The difference is if you make a copy of a component, so you have lots of components, all of the same thing, when I edit that component, they will all be edited together. So it makes an editable copy that they all change if you edit one of them. If you just make a group, it will only edit the one that you're editing. Okay, so that's really important. So for instance, this is going to become part of a wood joint. So if I double click with my left click, and let's say I wanted to make a miter joint, so I'm just going to cut that edge So you can see I've made a cut there, and I'm going to draw that down. Okay. Now, if I make a copy of that, I use the move tool. So the move tool, left click once, take the finger off, you'll see it starts to move. If I press the control button, you'll see I get a copy of that. Okay. So now you can see that I have got two of them. If I double click this one to edit it, for instance, maybe I want that to come out that way, you can see nothing happens here. Okay, I don't want to do that. But let's say, for instance, I made this a component, and we call it side 1. Now if I make a copy of this component, in the same way, move it, press Control, and you'll see you get a copy. Now if I edit this one, whatever I do to this one will do the same thing because it is the same component. So if you make something a component, just beware that it will change all of that style in the same way. So you can see that one's modifying exactly the same way I'm modifying this one. Okay. Now, that's the difference between groups and components. Okay, at the moment, I suggest you just use groupings, don't use components. I'll show you in more detail how to do that. Okay, I'm going to delete that. So we're going to just make that simple box that I showed you earlier. Okay, if you, for any reason, lose, like I just did then, your position, and you lost, say you're over here somewhere and you can't find the axis, if you click this tool here with the magnifying glass, it says zoom extents, it will take you back to the full picture. Okay, so we're going to start off with 150, comma, space, 45, press enter. Okay, now I can see that I've got one of my sides. I'm going to extrude that 12 millimeters, so I just type 12. Okay, now I'm going to make that a group. Triple click, right click on it, make group. Okay, then I'm going to, now if you want to move, if you click on the move tool, as you hover over parts of your work, you'll see these little red dots appear, and they are used for rotating and tilting. Okay, there is a rotate tool, but that you can use as well, but this is easier if you're just moving things and you want to quickly rotate. So if I just hover over, left click once, rotate to the angle I want, so 90 degrees, you'll feel it lock. In the bottom right hand corner it tells me it's 90. Click again, and now I've rotated it. Okay, I'm going to move this, so I'm going to left click, press Control so I get a copy. I'm going to move that 112 millimeters away because I've got to take into account the thickness. So that should be 100 millimeters between there and there. Now I'm going to draw in, so now I've got two sides. I'm going to draw in the opposite two sides. So actually I'm going to draw on this plane. So I'm going to click here once. You can see I've got a rubber band. Go up to the top edge. If you look in the bottom right hand corner, it tells me it's 45 high by 10.3. So I'm just going to type in, I want it 12 millimeters wide, comma, space, 45 high. Press enter and you'll see there I've got my face. Use the push-pull tool, click on it once, release the button, drag across until you get to this point. Now you'll see that in SketchUp they have this thing called inferencing, so if you lock to an edge it will follow that edge for you. So I can lock to that, click, and there I've got my second wall. Okay, so if I triple click that one, it will select all of that. Because these are already groups, it's going to ignore those. Right click, make a group, and then once I've made that, I can click in that corner, press Control, and just drag across. Now I want that to line up, so I'm going to click in that corner and just drag it so it's onto there. And there you have your 4 sides. Okay, now because they're grouped again, all I have to do to make the top is click in that corner there, come across to this one. You can see that we're on the blue, the right axis, so I click on there and you can see it's made a top. There's no thickness to it, so I need to extrude that up. Type 3 for 3mm, so if we were using 3mm plywood, then we have a top. Now if I want a base, I do exactly the same. Click there, pull that up 3mm, type 3, press enter, and I have a top and a bottom. Now I haven't grouped those. It's really important that you don't forget to group things. So I'm going to triple click that, make it a group, triple click that one, make a group. Okay, so now all these are grouped components, but they are all separate, so I can do that exploded view. Okay, now if I wanted to apply a finish to it so it looked more realistic, I'm going to click the paint bucket tool. On the right hand menu you have a materials menu which you can choose from materials. I'm going to go into more detail in another video, but on here I'm just going to select the wood, so you do the drop down menu. If you're on the online version, it will be off to the right. There is a materials button that you can click. You are limited online as to what you can use, so you'll have to choose one of those, but on the downloadable version you can actually make your own materials. So I'm going to choose wood, and we're going to put a wood veneer onto here. So I just click on grouped components, you'll see it actually puts a render or a surface on the whole of the grouped component. Okay, so now we have our box that looks like wood, a wooden box. Okay, now these are all separate groups. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the whole thing, all the groups, and this time I'm going to make it a component. I'm going to call that component box, click create, I'm going to make a copy of that box, doing the same way, move it, press Control, and then I'm going to make a third copy. Let's make 4 just for fun. If I lock to this axis, I can actually make it line up with this box. So I've got my finger on shift so it locks to the green axis, but then if I hover over this box I can inference to that corner, and then I know that's exactly in line with that one. Okay, so I've got 4 boxes. Now let's say you wanted to make an exploded view. Now because they are all the same, they're all components, if I change this one it will change all of them. Okay, so you do have to be aware when you're using components. If I wanted to modify this, and you always wanted to have lots of them, then whatever I do to this will happen to this one. Okay, so if I show you, if I pull this point out, you can see that it happens to all of them. Okay, again, if I were to pull that point out, you can see it happens to all of them. Okay, so that's the difference between grouping with groups and grouping with components. Okay, thank you for watching.